Hi, you guys. Welcome. My guest today is Kim Perez. Did I say it right?
Yep,
Yeah?
you did.
Okay, cool. Kim and I actually had our babies kind of around the same time. What is Henry's birthday?
October 15th.
Yeah. Okay, so we had our babies around the same time, and we've actually connected over like our struggles with in the postpartum period, and in particular breastfeeding and our breastfeeding journey, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But I'm super pumped to have you on, also because I follow your podcast. Kim has a podcast called Balanced Babes, and I'll let you go ahead and talk a little bit more about your business with Root and Branch Nutrition and a little bit more about that. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, who you are, your baby, and anything else that you want to share with us.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm really, really excited to be here. So I have a practice, Root and Branch Nutrition, which is now my sole business, which is really exciting. I started it in 2015, and it was just, it evolved since then, obviously, but it started as just like, I want to help people with their nutrition. I've always had a passion for it. My own health journey, I've had, just a lot of things happen in my life that have brought me to, realizing that nutrition is super powerful, and health issues that I was struggling with were remedied by improving my nutrition. And then that led to like improving my lifestyle habits as well. So I started that, and again, like as I started working with clients and seeing the types of things that people consulted me for, I just slowly started to really narrow down into what my focus was going to be, which is women's health and hormones, really specifically. And I think that began with my struggles with period issues and hormonal imbalances. And so I started to focus on that, and that also branches into fertility and pregnancy and postpartum, which now that I've been through it myself, or am in it right now, I want to focus on a lot more because, as you said, my son Henry was born October 15th. He's my first. And as much preparation as I thought I did, and I did a lot of preparation, it just wasn't enough. And it just amazed me, the challenges, the amount of issues that are not talked about, and how much I've connected with you and other women that are going through all these things, and varying degrees of support, varying degrees of just, knowledge about everything. So it's been really, really eye-opening for me personally, but also professionally. And then, the podcast started. We talked about that. So my friend Amanda and I, we talked about it for probably 2 years, and we finally launched it this summer. So again, it's all about women's health and hormones, and everything from like fertility and menstrual health to nutrition and stress and self-care. We talk about it all.
Awesome. Okay, so I think that's actually kind of perfect, because I imagine that your work played a role in conceiving Henry, and like, tell me a little bit about that journey and how you got there.
Yeah, so it definitely did. I think I was really fortunate because I kind of immersed myself into the world of fertility and hormone balancing well before I was even thinking about conceiving myself. So I had a lot of information. I had a lot of resources. I had a lot of support throughout that journey. So, a little bit about my background without, getting too deep into the details, but I always had really irregular periods, and I always struggled with a lot of hormonal issues. So when it came to conceiving, I knew, we talked about it. We knew, my husband and I have been together for over 10 years. So we knew like that was in our future. So a little over a year before we actually did conceive, I started doing a lot of things differently. I changed my nutrition. I, like many women, had a history of being really strict with my diet, which started as like dieting as a teen to lose weight. I mean, I think a lot of women can relate to that. I lost a lot of weight through calorie control and being really strict and even under eating and probably some disordered behaviors as well. And that grew into like being really strict with the paleo diet and trying things like keto and trying it all.
Yeah.
So one of the things I started with was just like loosening the reins and eating and listening to my body and diving more deeply into my intuition and knowing what foods were working for my body, what foods weren't, how much to eat, and just instead of counting and tracking, just being a little bit more in tune. So I started doing things like that. I sought out acupuncture. I've also and always probably will be a highly stressed person. I'm very type A, and I sought out acupuncture as a means to help me manage my stress. But the acupuncturist that I began working with was also, she's a Chinese medicine doctor and herbalist who specializes in fertility. So when I started working with her, it was like right before my wedding last year. We talked like, yeah, I'd like to, we're talking about conceiving. And she said, oh, that's, perfect timing that you're here. We can work on this a lot. So I really dove deeply into seeing her. I changed up my exercise routine. I think that's when I did join street parking because I was over-exercising. I was going to CrossFit 5 times a week, lifting on top of that, like really over-pushing myself. So a lot of my actual journey to conception was like slowing down, loosening the reins, not being so strict. And that was what I needed. But also, like, as I worked with women, so many women who were having issues with their hormones or wanting to get pregnant and were struggling, a lot of the times it was because they were doing things like under eating, over exercising, not sleeping enough, not practicing self-care and stress management. So when it came to me, I'm like, okay, well, I have to walk the walk and do it for myself.
Yep.
And we conceived right away. I was really lucky that I didn't have any issues, and I think that had a lot to do with the fact that I took a good year to really, really focus on getting myself like healthy in a different way.
Yeah.
Like really focusing on my overall well-being. So, so that was kind of the journey to where I was at. And I also did some functional lab testing, supplemented according to what my needs were, which is something that I also do with women. Like I had varying levels, like my cortisol was high, my stress hormone was high, my progesterone was low. So there was a lot of different other things that went into it nutritionally as well. Yeah.
I also had a similar experience starting at about a year before we decided to conceive. Like I knew that was pretty much the timeline for us, ideally, I guess. And I had done every type of nutrition challenge, every type of thing. I actually had reached a point where I couldn't remember not being on some type of challenge, and so I also took a turn towards, I guess you can say more like intuitive eating, but really it was just about like eating things that brought me some joy, And sometimes it was like bright, colorful fruits and vegetables. And sometimes it was, a beautiful like loaf of bread or chocolate croissant or whatever. And like my whole everything, my training, that's also when I joined street parking, my, just mindset was I kept going towards like, let's get you in a place where it's less stress and more joy. And I also feel very grateful that I had a fairly easy time conceiving, but a piece of me definitely, would like to think that less stress helped with that, and actively.
That's the number. Sorry.
Yeah,
that's the number one thing I see with women. Like whatever issue a woman comes to me with, and I focus on hormones, and that's my background. But like, I also see women who have like digestive issues and like thyroid and so many other things like fall under this umbrella of stress. And I mean, stress can be like mental, emotional stress. It can be, food can be stressful, like not eating enough or eating foods that are super inflammatory to your body. And it all falls under that umbrella of stress.
Yeah.
So when we like peel back different layers of stress and kind of like reduce the overall stress load, I see it make like immense changes. And that was definitely the case for me, because
Yeah.
I was always, as somebody who like is focused on nutrition, and I'm obsessed with it. I love it.
Yeah.
For me, it was like I was always looking for like, what food am I eating that I shouldn't be,
Yeah.
right? Or like, what diet can I try? When it really was like, no, like my nutrition was good. It's not perfect.
Yeah.
It's great. It's nutritious, but that really wasn't the issue for me. It was more so like the stress and the self-care.
Cool. Okay. So then you guys conceive, and tell me about your experience with pregnancy, and how you started preparing for your first birth.
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I think also like a lead in from the whole nutrition thing, getting pregnant, being pregnant definitely threw me even more into like listening to my body, because as you know, and I don't know what your specific ones were, but you have like these different cravings and different aversions, and your nutrition all of a sudden changes, where you might be used to eating one way, and then now you're growing a human and your hormones are out of whack, and nutrition it demands that, you change what you eat. So I was really fortunate to not have a really symptomatic pregnancy, and a lot of women are really sick in the first trimester, especially. I had some like nausea and just like ickiness that was manageable. I had just like weird symptoms, and it's funny, we actually did a whole podcast episode on it, because I was like, I wasn't prepared for a lot of this.
Oh yeah.
The weird things that happen.
Yeah.
My number one complaint was the fatigue,
Mm-hmm.
and that I wasn't expecting at all. Just like mental and physical exhaustion. But all of that really did lighten up around the second trimester, and they call that the honeymoon trimester, because you feel so great, and I really did. I maintained my exercise, and like I was really active, and I felt really good. So I only had a couple like minor things. I had some early first trimester bleeding, and a couple scares there,
Mm-hmm.
which was really, really, caused a lot of anxiety. But everything turned out to be fine. And yeah, I mean, I think like there's the fatigue and some of the food cravings and food aversions where I was like, all right, I need to like lean into this and kind of like work with it. And instead of pushing myself to work late or take on extra clients or, say yes to things, I had to really start to say no and be okay with taking a nap, or being okay with like skipping a workout so that I could sleep in, and being okay with if I really wanted something and I normally didn't eat it, like I'm going to live and it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
And I had to really change my approach to a lot of that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy how you're like, I'm gonna do this, and I've got this under control, and I'm ready, and I'm prepared. I've been preparing for this for a whole year, and then all of a sudden, it's fatigue. At least for me, it was unlike anything I'd ever experienced, and what that did to, I knew because I coached it, this approach, or like a shift in mindset. Where it wasn't so much about needing to like work out or train for, let's say, like out of habit or like, I don't know, ego, I guess. It was more so, I need to move my body for this pregnancy and for this baby. And so maybe that's going to look a little bit different from what I was doing before. And what I was doing, just kind of like wrapping my ego, honestly, around some of that, and saying like, oh, it's okay. In fact, it might be necessary for me to do less, or something that looks like it's less,
Yeah, exactly. And I had a really interesting relationship with movement during my pregnancy, because I had bleeding in the beginning, and I was spotting, and I was put on pelvic rest, so I wasn't allowed to exercise until I think week 14 I got cleared to exercise. So I was like itching. At that point, I think like being without it really made me realize like how much I took it for granted, just movement, because I've always been used to like, moving because it's a habit, like exercising, going to the gym because it's a habit, or, doing it to look a certain way, which, it's fine, we can do that. But now it was totally different. And being without, my routine for, I think it only in total was probably like probably like 6 weeks. But I started to realize like, wow, I took that for granted before because now my routine's thrown off. And what do I do with this like hour that I normally had? But at the same time, like I realized how much worse I felt without movement.
Right.
So when I got cleared again, I remember I went for like a scan because I had a hematoma. That's why I was bleeding. And I went for a scan and they were like, everything's good. It's clear. We don't see it anymore. And I asked the doctor like, okay, great. Can I work out now? And she said, yeah. And I guess the look on my face really gave it away. She's like, I wish that I could get that excited about exercise.
Yeah.
But it was such a part of, what made me feel good. And then from that point forward, I think I enjoyed movement more during pregnancy than I ever had. That changed my perspective a lot because I learned that I really don't feel good when I don't move. And I took the pressure off myself to do a certain thing or follow a certain progression of program. I would do my street parking workouts at home in my living room, barefoot most of the time.
Yep.
And if I didn't feel like it, I would go for a walk. And it might be like the slowest walk ever, especially towards the end. But I didn't feel that pressure to like do it for a certain amount of time or, follow a specific pattern of things. I just kind of went with what felt good. And that made a huge difference for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I've heard that from other women. And I think I had some of that experience also where it's like you go to this place where you hopefully start moving really intuitively, which if you think about it is kind of how we should probably always be moving. I remember this a little bit from when I got certified to teach prenatal yoga. I was like blown away because of all of the modifications and all of the options for adjustments. And there were all these women that were moving in a different way because they were all at different stages or in a different place. And it was like, wait, this is what it's supposed to look like, right? Not all of us trying to do the exact same pose on the exact same day because we're not all in the same place to be doing that. So being pregnant was kind of like, I encourage a lot of the street parking women with the modifications. I try to say get creative. I know sometimes it's nice to have someone just tell you what to do, but at the same time, I want to encourage women to really get creative with how they're modifying and how they're moving and listen to how you're doing that day. And it doesn't have to look at all like what everyone else is doing or what you did yesterday or what you thought you were going to do when you started, And that I really, really enjoyed. It felt like I was deeply connecting to myself for the first time, in a long time.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I should have also mentioned, one of the things that I really dove deeply into before I got pregnant, for at least the last year and a half, almost 2 years beforehand, was cycle syncing, which is matching your different exercise, lifestyle, nutrition habits to the phase of your cycle that you're in.
Yeah.
And I think that really helped me and started doing it with the women that I work with, really just getting in tune to what's going on with your body and realizing that we're not static beings.
Right.
Things change from month to month, day to day, week to week. And doing that with my cycle and getting in tune and tracking my cycle and really, really learning my body just set that foundation for being pregnant. Because as you know, some days during pregnancy, you feel really great. Mm-hmm. And some days you just don't feel it at all.
Yeah.
And doing that when I actually had a cycle, it taught me give myself more grace, how to really listen to my body and what it needed, and how to be okay with changing according to that.
Yeah.
So that was one of the most important things, encompassing everything I did during pregnancy.
Yeah. That's awesome. Okay. So you are physically preparing, you're preparing, with your nutrition, mindset wise, was there anything that you were doing to intentionally prepare? Was there a type of birth experience that you were planning for? And was there something that you were doing to help you plan for that?
Definitely. Mindset wise, I kind of change what I do from time to time. I picked up, I always go back and forth between a meditation routine, or, if I'm not doing that, maybe it's the journaling. I found that like my walking, I would go and walk outside, and that was kind of like this like walking meditation where I could kind of gather my thoughts. I listened to a ton of podcasts when I was on those walks. So it was like kind of like this educational mindset hour for me. And I've read like a ton of books. And I knew, just based off, everything that all my values in terms of, what I wanted to do with birth, I really wanted to, because again, like I'm a champion of women and women's bodies. And I was like, how can I not want to experience childbirth the way that, women, we're able to do this, we're capable.
Mm-hmm.
So my goal was an unmedicated childbirth.
Mm-hmm.
And I read and I researched, and I had, this idea of what I wanted to happen. And at the same time, I had to be okay with things not going my way.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the goal that I set out. And what I really did was I read a lot of books that were empowering, that were, again, like champions of women's bodies, and learning about all the different options and the different interventions and why behind this and the why behind that. We hired a doula, and we took a birth class, which was wonderful. And I'm the kind of person that questions everything. I need to learn everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I just dove deep into that. I read a ton of books, listened, like I said, to a ton of podcasts, and just like equipped myself with all the knowledge for, number one, wanting to carry out the experience that I really did want, but also like knowing if it didn't go that way, what else to do.
Yeah.
Because I don't know about you, but my birth didn't go 100% the way I wanted to.
Nope.
Yeah. So I had to know what are the alternatives. And it's not just, okay, you have an unmedicated, like, your unmedicated vaginal birth where you're like walking and moving and squatting and doing all the things, essential oils and all that, stuff, versus like, it doesn't have to be that, or like you're having a C-section. There's just all of this
totally
crazy in between. And learning all those different things helped me when I was in it, because I didn't have to, I had this information in the back of my head.
Yeah.
I had support. I had my husband who took the class with me. I had my doula. So one thing didn't go the way that I wanted to. I knew, okay, these are the alternatives.
Totally.
And they're the pros and cons. And I know, okay, if plan A doesn't work, this is what I want for plan B.
Yeah.
So yeah, education, support, and just knowing that there are alternatives, and I have to be okay with things not going my way.
Yeah. So were there any, or is there a book or a podcast that really stands out to you? Like if your best friend in the world got pregnant, what would be the first one that you'd recommend?
So I recommend the book Real Food for Pregnancy for everyone. And I guess
Same.
It's not really like a labor delivery book, but I think it's just an amazing book all around.
Yep.
My favorite book that I read for actual birth was Ina May Gaskin's Guide to Childbirth.
Yeah.
And I had, and I still do, I have a list on Amazon. Anytime someone recommended a book about birth, I put it on my list, and I ended up ordering none, because I read that book and I was like, I feel like that's all I need.
Yeah.
It was simple. It was, just again, based off like, this is what your body's capable of doing. These are, some of the medications they might use, some of the interventions, some of the things that, might go different directions. And I felt like that was enough.
Yeah.
So that was really it. And then, podcasts, I love the Birth Fit podcast. I love listening to birth stories. So there's the Birth Hour podcast, I think it's called. I listen to the Modern Mamas podcast all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I just kind of try to vary all the different avenues and try to stick to things that are positive, but also different experiences as well. Like to hear about somebody's unmedicated birth versus somebody's unplanned C-section versus somebody's home birth. I just wanted to kind of hear it all.
Totally. Yeah, I've hesitated with this podcast and, not wondering if like someone who's pregnant or trying to conceive would hear some of the different birth stories and be put off. And I just kind of feel like I had a similar experience to yours, again, in that I wanted to hear the stories, even if they were stories that didn't end the way that they had expected, or didn't go the way they had expected, because for me it was important to even be aware of that. Like, I didn't know all of the different ways that birth could look, and I feel now like it's just important to at least have the information. And obviously, like, if you want to block it out, cool. I totally understand. That is how some people need to do it. But if you want to hear the different ways that it can go, then I'd love to help provide that.
Yeah, I agree. And I have people that I've talked to that were like, nope, I didn't listen to any birth story. I didn't watch any birth. Like, I didn't follow any accounts that would show any of that. I just wanted to go into it. And that's fine. Like, everyone's entitled to their choice. And I think that's great. Same thing, versus like women that are, okay, I can do this naturally without medication. But there's also women that are like, okay, epidurals, that's modern medicine. If I can have a baby without feeling pain or, most of the pain, then why wouldn't I? So there's just so much in between that I think that it's the most important thing to me with any decision, whether it's like birth, nutrition, exercise, whatever. I think that it's just important that people have the information and make the decision for themselves.
Totally. Yeah.
So that's where I come with anything, as long as you have, that your options, that you have options and you consider those, it's your body, it's your life. Like, you make your decision.
For sure.
And I'm so much more comfortable when somebody feels empowered to make that decision versus like, somebody telling them, like a doctor telling them you need to do it this way or, something like that.
Missing out on an opportunity because they didn't know that they had a choice. I hear that would be frustrating. Okay, so let's talk about the birth story itself. How does this go? December 15th. What does that look like?
So, so my due date was actually the next day. So my due date was October 16th.
Or October,
and
sorry.
Talk about like mindset and how, like, things and what people say and experience is like, I had it drilled in my head that I was going to be like 42 weeks and have to get induced. Like, that was just my perception. I had so many friends and people that I knew, colleagues and acquaintances that had babies this year. And I think like 90% of them were quote unquote overdue, past their due date. Right. So I just had in my mind that was going to happen to me. So I was trying to do all these different things to kind of get things moving. And then the day before, so Monday, the 14th, I woke up like 7 o'clock in the morning and my water had broken when I was sleeping, but like, it wasn't an all out gush. It was like a slow leak. So like, I don't really know what this is. I didn't have any contractions. I was getting like Braxton Hicks for a good like 2 weeks beforehand, especially at night. But nothing was like progressing. So my water broke. I called the doctor. They're like, you should come in so we can check it. And by the time I got into the doctor, it was, I think, like 11:30. And they confirmed, they're like, yep, it's amniotic fluid, but your cervix is closed, you're not dilated, and you have no contractions, so we have to induce you. And I just like freaked out because I knew all my research and everything that people that I've talked to, like, induction often leads to a spiral of interventions. And I cried like the whole afternoon. They were like, all right, well, my doctor was like, all right, I'll meet you at the hospital. Like, go there now.
Yeah.
And after we left the appointment, we got in the car, and my husband, I was like, I don't want to go to the hospital right now. Let's just like breathe, take a minute, see if we can get things moving. So we like went to a local park, we walked around, we got lunch, we went home, picked up our things, nothing happened. So we went to the hospital, and they, admitted me and everything. And now it's like 4 or 5 o'clock. And I think, I was trying also at that time to like wrap my head around like this. I don't know how this is going to go at this point. So they discussed my options. I knew that I really didn't want to get Pitocin because I knew, that can cause like really intense contractions and can also lead to, the need for an epidural and all these other things. So they wanted to induce me with Cytotec, which helps to like thin and efface your cervix over time with the hope that that'll, move things along. So the plan was I was going to get 4 doses of this, like, it was like half the size of my pinky nail pill, over the course of, I think it was every 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So the nurse came in at 8 p.m., gave me the first dose. She's like, all right, I'll be back, in 4 hours and blah, blah, blah. And like, tomorrow morning, you'll get started on Pitocin and you'll have your baby by tomorrow night. And I was just in full on panic mode. Like, I was not in the mental space that I wanted to be in, because I was like, now I'm coming from this place of like feeling empowered and feeling like finally, like, I can do this, to now, like, oh crap, like, this is not what I wanted.
Yeah.
And I felt like I had no control over it. So I took some time to breathe and, just kind of went along with what the original plan was for me. I had to be hooked up to the monitors and all the things that I didn't want. But, luckily my hospital that I chose to deliver at, all their nurses are holistically trained. They had lots of different, like, the peanut balls and lots of different tools. They encourage you to move. And I had my doula, my husband, and my mom with me. So I had like tons of support. And, so I got the first dose at 8. My husband and I, like, kind of hunkered down. We actually put a movie on, and I fell asleep around like 11:30 or midnight. And 2 a.m. I woke up like full on contractions.
Wow.
So called the nurse in.
With just the first dose?
That was after the second dose. Okay. So I took the second dose before I went to sleep.
Okay.
So I started full on contractions at like 2 o'clock. By like 2:30, I called the nurse in. I'm like, hey, can you just let me know what's going on? Like, how far apart are they? And I was like, just full on active labor.
Wow.
So like by 2:30 in the morning, my contractions were 2 to 3 minutes apart, almost a minute long. So things progressed really quickly from there, which was good. So she came back in at like 3 o'clock, and I, things had been progressing, and she's like, you know what, you're in labor. We're not even going to need to give you the rest, which was like, thank God, by that point.
Yeah.
So the rest of like the time warp, I don't really know timing of what, but I remember at one point, like, things were getting pretty intense, and they wanted to limit cervical checks for me because my water had broken such a long time ago. Now I'm on the clock. So, but things were getting so intense, and my doula had me, in different positions to help bring the baby down. So I was like doing a lot of hip movements and using the peanut ball and like sitting on the toilet, and things were really intensifying. So I finally called the nurse in, and at one point I started getting shaky, and I called her in and I'm like, I know you want to limit cervical checks, but this is getting pretty intense. So, can you do one? Because I thought in my mind, if I'm, dilating, well, then I'll put up with it. But I thought, like, if things are this intense and I'm only like a centimeter or 2, that might change how I feel.
Yeah.
So she checked me and I was already 5 centimeters. So I was like, all right, cool. Like, in my mind, I'm halfway there. So
totally.
So things just kind of progressed from there, like lots of movement. I had, like I said, my husband, my doula, and my mom. Like, somebody had essential oil, somebody was rubbing my back, somebody was bringing me up. Like, it was a full-on team effort.
Yeah.
And looking back, it was like, I don't think I could have done it without all of them there. So I just, my labor went really fast, and I was very, very fortunate. It was fast. It was intense. Around like 6:30, I felt the urge to push, and I called the nurse, and they were surprised because they thought like Tuesday night I was going to have this baby. Now it's 6:30 in the morning on Tuesday, and she texted me and she's like, "You're fully dilated. Like, I have to go get the doctor." So there was this period of time, which I think was only like 20 minutes, that felt like 10 hours, where I was like writhing in pain because I had to push, but they didn't want me to.
Oh, God.
And out of everything that I went through, that was the worst experience. I mean, that was the point where I was like the women you see on TV in labor, like screaming, crying, like, somebody help me. And God. I don't want to scare anybody, but that's what happened. Yeah. And it was short-lived, right? So my midwife came in, and I pushed for an hour and a half. It was the most intense thing that I've ever gone through. But I ended up, at least, with I labored, and I had my baby unmedicated. In the end, things progressed quickly on my own. I was exhausted, but I knew, like, if my labor progressed and it was, like now 12 hours, or if I was super, super tired, they also weren't letting me eat, which was annoying. I knew if all those things kept happening, like, I would be okay with getting an epidural. Yeah. But the fact that things went so fast, like I really didn't have time for it.
Right.
Which at the end, like it all happened and I was like, wow, I did that.
Yeah.
But I remember getting to the, pushing and like feeling the baby crowning, and like the thought in my head was, okay, I can't go back now. Like I'm in this right now. So the only way out is through it.
I've heard that though, that somebody was like,
woman, like, get him out, please get him out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, from there it was a positive experience. I felt like the entire induction and the fear that I had of things kind of getting out of my control really did change. And I know that a lot of that had to do with the fact that, I was fully supported. I was calm. Like I was zen, like I've never been in my life, breathing through contractions. And looking back at it, I'm like, who was that?
Yeah,
but
totally.
You channel an entirely different being. I was just in this like other space, this other world. So yeah, I mean, I had an uncomplicated vaginal unmedicated delivery, which, in the end was the goal: healthy mom, healthy baby.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was it.
Wow. Was there anything that your doula or your husband, was there any tool, pain management tool, I guess you could say, that really helped you or that stood out to you, that you were like, oh, this was my move? I know for me, I had like the shower was a huge, that was my place. And I had I did a little circuit in the shower and everything that like really worked for me. Was there something like that for you?
It's funny. I planned, like in my head, they even asked me, like, do you want to be able to use the shower, the tub? And that was like number one on my list. And I actually never did it. Mm-hmm. I think my biggest tool was like breath and like my voice. Like I know that like just humming and moaning and kind of like finding a rhythm with that, that was really what helped me, as well as like touch. Like my doula was rubbing my back, rubbing my hips, and that kind of helped to distract me. But I know that for me, it like came from just like my breath, also just like repeating certain things in my head, kind of like knowing that the pain was purposeful, knowing that like what I was feeling was my baby moving down. Like this is bringing me closer to my baby. That really, really helped me because, it was painful, but knowing that there was an end in sight, knowing that there was like this miracle at the end of the tunnel really, really was what brought me through it.
Yeah. Okay. So Henry's born and then what happens? How does that immediate time period look for you?
When he, like the first minute he was born and they put him on my chest, like that moment, I can't describe. It was like this, it's like this euphoria, but at the same time, it was so unreal. Mm-hmm. Like in my head, I don't know, it sounds kind of weird. Like I knew I was pregnant. I knew I was having a baby. I knew that's what was happening. And he put it on my chest and I was like, oh, there's a baby now. Oh. It's very, very weird.
Yeah.
Very weird. Yeah. It was very surreal. But it was like, it was beautiful. It was amazing. I was completely like just numbed to everything. And I feel like those like first few hours, just, I don't even know what happened. But once that like numbing kind of subsided and you're hit with like the reality of the situation, at least for me, I knew like physically things were going to feel different. Mm-hmm. But I remember like the first time I was with everyone, like looking at my belly and like, dealing with everything else going on down there. Yeah. That really like snapped me into it. Like, oh crap. Like now I got to deal with all this stuff too. I have this baby, as you know, like we had nursing struggles. Yeah. So, you think and you want to think, and it is such a beautiful, amazing experience, but there's all this like, there's these struggles, there's these challenges, there's these realities that you also have to deal with. And intellectually, I knew that was going to happen, but when it really did happen, I'm in the throes of it, it really did kind of surprise me.
Totally.
So I kind of, I the healing situation, the physical pain that I was in, and then balancing that out with like people wanting to visit and like having to set boundaries is where I think I struggled the most.
Yeah.
Like here we are trying to bond with this new life and figure out breastfeeding, which, you know, you want to believe they put the baby on you and it just happens, but it just didn't for us.
Yeah.
And then people want to come in and see you and you're bleeding and you're naked and it's just weird. Like, and I felt bad trying to like tell people like, no, now's not the right time. Like we need some space, because I knew, you know, my family was excited. They wanted us to meet the baby, but I just like was not in the space for any of that, like physically or emotionally. It took me a while. It took me like, I would say the first 2 weeks to really feel like semi myself.
Yeah, it was, I remember thinking like I had done such a good job of setting boundaries between, you know, people coming to visit, but I was like, well, my parents, you know, but I have like my mom, my stepdad, my dad, my stepmom, my husband's parent, you know, like that in itself was like already a lot. And I remember we can get into the nursing, but it was like pretty immediately within the first couple of days, I was having some struggles with that. And so then there was the schedule and this like triple feeding schedule. And then with people even just wanting to sit there and like talk, it would throw the schedule off. And that was stressful. And I feel like it was really challenging. And, you know, looking back on it, I do wish I had said, I need more time, you know, I need more time. Please bring me some food, but I can't sit with you right now, you know?
Yeah.
But it is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. And like you have to go through it to learn, I think. And then it made me look back on all the family members and friends of mine that have had babies, and you know, you just don't know until you've been through it. And now it's like exciting for me that I realize this now for like my friends that do go on to have babies and family and things like that I can better support them. Yeah. And not that I wasn't supported. I think like I had family members, my mom bringing over food, doing our laundry, my mother-in-law bringing food. I had a lot of support, but at the same time, I had trouble setting boundaries. And I even brought it up to my husband, like, you know, maybe you need to be the gatekeeper because I'm having trouble saying no. Yeah. And I was hit really hard with baby blues. Like I was crying for just all the time, and the nursing and the pain. And then I felt bad when people would come over, and here I am just looking like this emotional mess when I have this brand new, beautiful baby. It made me feel guilty. But that was really real for me. Like your hormones are all over the place. You're emotional for so many different reasons. I was in such pain and it frustrated me. Yeah. So initially we had a lot of visitors, and then like once we went through our own like triple feeding and all of that, it was like, sorry, we got to figure this out. Yeah. And, you know, be here when, you know, we're ready for you to come over. We'll let you know. So,
when did you realize that breastfeeding wasn't going the way that you thought it would?
So actually, I noticed immediately, my son had a tongue tie. I noticed it when he was crying, and as soon as they put it on my chest, like I saw it. Wow. So like I just saw his tongue wasn't coming out, and I saw the actual tie under his tongue, and I knew about it. So when the pediatrician came in, and initially he didn't latch properly, I was in pain. So when the pediatrician came in, I mentioned it, and they're like, all right, well, we'll bring lactation in. And they came in and they saw it, and then they brought the surgeon in. Mm-hmm. He's like, you know what, we can take him, we can clip it, it's no big deal. So this was like hour, maybe 4 or 5 that he was even born. Wow. And I was like, you know what, if we intervene now, it probably can prevent us from issues, right? So I let them, they took him, they clipped the tongue, he had a lip tie as well. So they did that, they brought him back. And I thought like things were magically just going to happen from there. And what I've learned, and you know, over this like eight weeks it's been, is that for some it does, and for some, like my son, he just doesn't know how to use his newfound tongue muscles. Yeah. So just never learned to latch properly. And initially for us, he lost 9% of his body weight coming home from the hospital. So we were immediately like flagged and brought to the pediatrician, and we met with lactation consultants, and they put us on that triple feeding schedule, which was nurse, pump, give him a bottle whenever he wanted to eat, which was like every 2 hours.
It's
so that was
so
exhausting.
intense.
So intense. I wish that on absolutely nobody. It was insane. And he had a poor latch, and then I'm pumping on top of it. So I was in tons of pain. I mean, if anyone ever needs any suggestions for nursing, like nipple supplies, I've done absolutely everything, even to this day, because his latch never improved. So now we're 8 weeks in, and we're still working with lactation, and now bringing him for craniosacral therapy and speech therapy and physical therapy. I mean, I never, ever expected this. I knew breastfeeding wasn't going to be easy, but I never expected this at all. And that's been the biggest challenge for me. I mean, I think like I healed physically very well. Emotionally, things went well. He's healthy. We're thriving, but the breastfeeding struggles were and still are like the heaviest thing for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I wish I had known that this thing called a triple feed even existed beforehand. I don't know that would have like changed anything for me. But it hit me so hard, and it was so hard to do. And I feel like, I mean, even more so than like I had an intense labor and I had an intense physical recovery, but the mindset and the endurance that was required to go through the triple feed was like beyond anything. And you're right. I also am still, I don't know what we're doing. I think, I call myself like a combo mom, where I do some breastfeeding and some bottle feeding, some formula, and it's what we've figured out like to get by and to be happy. But it's really, really tough, and no one told me anything about any of this. I had no idea. There's no instructions for pumping, for the timing, for the exercises that your baby might have to do to learn how to use their mouth, for there's no instructions for it. There's no warning.
No, not at all. And I mean, even so, like in my whole pregnancy journey and information gathering, I mean, I read breastfeeding books. I went to a breastfeeding class.
I took a class.
Yeah. And I thought, like, I have all the tools that I need now, and I can troubleshoot the issues. But it took me a while because of his latch and his inability to like transfer the milk properly. My supply dropped, and that was just like frustrating for me, because here I am thinking like, okay, now it's my fault that he's not being able, and it does like crush you, because it's like I should be able to feed my baby. Like that's like the most innate thing that I should be able to do, and I can't. So emotionally, that was just the worst. That was the worst part of it. But then just learning that like his mouth and these issues, and in fact, I didn't even mention, they did the release in the hospital, his ties, and maybe like a week and a half later, lactation consultant kind of like took a look in his mouth. She's like, it's possible that they didn't do it enough. Like he could have a deeper tongue tie. So we actually had to take him to a specialist and get it fully released, because he had a posterior tongue tie. So he had a pretty deep tie.
Yeah.
So like it's taken me, and I'm still there, like I'm still in it, but it's taken me this long so far to realize like I'm doing everything that I possibly can to make this work. And there are just things that are not within my control. And now I'm at the point where, I've learned so much about what these tongue ties can have, consequences they can have for future, for like his speech and like feeding and different things. So I'm almost pursuing all of this support for like future, and maybe just thinking that, maybe breastfeeding from my breast is just not in the cards, and I'm trying to learn to like be okay with that.
Yep.
Which is, again, like an up and down roller coaster, but just learning, like I'm doing everything. And in the end, no matter what happens, I know that I can say I did everything to try to make it work. And if it doesn't, he's still getting breast milk. We're supplementing with formula, and I've done tons of research, and I found one that I feel good giving him, and he's gaining weight, and he's healthy, and he's happy. And that makes all the difference versus when he was like shallow latching, not getting enough milk, always hungry, always, crying and frustrated. It's been a better experience to see him like happy and like he's a happy, healthy baby.
Yeah.
And that's really in the end what matters.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like I beat myself up for a while thinking like, am I not healthy enough to be able to produce enough, or to figure this out, to correct it? Like I'm doing all of the things, right? And it's still not working. And I think that stopping, I told you at one point, like I stopped pumping for like a full week. It was around the time that we made our move or whatever, and stopping the pumping and like getting some mental space around that and giving myself an opportunity to actually sleep, because when you're doing the triple feed, there's no sleep. It's like 30 minutes at a time. Giving myself an opportunity to sleep, to like eat, to not be in that place of like just fear and stress and all of it. That did a lot for my supply, and just doing my best, but also, and I think doing my best means like finding a way for us to be happy, So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's come down to that point, and I've heard it from other women before I went through it, and I never really realized the magnitude of it. But what you're doing has to be, there's a physical health aspect of breastfeeding. There's obviously this emotional bonding, but then there's also your own health and well-being and like mental health. And I've been trying to kind of find a balance between that.
Yeah.
Right now I'm exclusively pumping and bottle feeding him and just like trying to nurse when I can, which is not successful, and it frustrates me and him. And just learning like what's the balance here? Like what's going to make us happy? What's going to make me happy? And it's different every day. It really is. It's like a roller coaster. But learning that, I have to also take care of me, even though like he's my number one priority. I can't fall down on the list.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like we were deep in the trenches together for a little while. I mean, still there, but it was dark for a while.
It was. And I don't know about you, but at least for me, I felt like very alone in this. Like everyone I know has either breastfed and had no issues, or, didn't breastfeed and chose not to, and formula fed and didn't have a problem with it. Like that was their decision. So I felt kind of alone in what I was going through. And I think reaching out and getting support and knowing that like you were going through it with me. Yeah. So many other women had gone through it and were able to offer like, obviously like practical advice, like try this, try that, but also just like, hey, that happened to me too. And I went through that, and this is the outcome, and just learning that you're not alone in it. And this is something that, again, I never knew of. I never knew what a triple feed was.
Right.
But once I talked about it, there were so many other women that had done it. And I was like, okay, like this is more common than I actually think. And I don't have to feel so alone in it.
Yeah. I think I hit that point when it was like, we did the tongue tie and the lip tie revision, and then it still didn't get better. Like I also thought it would magically get better, and it didn't. There was still a lot of work, and there was a long way to go after that. But it was at that point that I was like, oh man, I am alone in this, because I thought everyone else got like fixed with that, and everything was supposed to be really good after that. And then I felt really alone. And then reaching out about it, I heard from so many moms saying like, I did the triple feed. it was rough. You'll get through it. Hang in there, this and that. Like, that was so helpful. That's why I love the street parking group.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's been one of the main things that's helped me throughout this, because you can reach out and find out what people have done. And same thing with birth. I think knowing the options, like there are women that said like, hey, we did the triple feed and it helped. And, we have this breastfeeding journey that we've been on now for a year.
Yeah.
And then you hear women that were like, yeah, we did the triple feed and it was so mentally exhausting and it was affecting my mental health. And we decided to formula feed and we're happy and healthy. So knowing again, like there are different ways to do it. And just like your combo, of nursing and pumping, like my son can get breast milk and get formula, and some days it's less, some days, some days more formula, some days it's less. Like it's just, that's how it is. And we're just getting through it however we can. And there's not just like one way it has to look.
Yeah. Okay. So is there anything that you want to add or share that you would want to leave for a new mom besides Google triple feed? Is there anything else that you want to add?
Know what a triple feed is. Yeah, I mean, God, there's so many things. One of the things that I, when I work with women who are trying to get pregnant and they're having difficulties, or women that are having pregnancy struggles, like they're really sick or, they don't feel good or whatever the case might be, knowing that that there's people out there going through it. So reaching out and talking to people makes a world of difference. And also knowing like there's nothing wrong with your body. Mindset works. And sometimes like I'm guilty of it. I've been guilty of it, but knowing that there's nothing wrong with your body has innate abilities to get pregnant, to have a healthy pregnancy, to, birth a baby, and just, not doubting yourself, but at the same time getting the support that you need from other people, getting information and getting in tune with your body and learning, what you might need physically, mentally. It doesn't have to look any one specific way. Mm-hmm. But I think that that's something that a lot of women do struggle with, if there's something wrong with them or, it doesn't look perfect. It doesn't look perfect for anybody. So that's been my experience. That's been the experience of women that I've worked with. And yeah, I think that that's what it all comes down to. And lessen your stress.
Yeah.
Wherever you are in this journey, try to find a way to reduce your stress, whether that is like, making a different choice about nursing or, going to acupuncture or changing the way that you eat, like whatever it is to get rid of some stress that you have and find ways to helpfully cope with that, no matter where you are in this journey, is going to make a huge difference.
Yeah. In one last question, I think, what way or what's the role that street parking has played in all of this for you?
So originally, I joined street parking, like I said, because I was over-exercising and I was just looking for something that, another kind of program I could follow. And I didn't realize like there was a huge community aspect to it. So I struggled with leaving CrossFit. I'd been there for years. I loved the community, but, for so many different reasons, I couldn't stay. And finding that community through street parking is what I think, the workouts are, I love that aspect of it, but I know that the community is what really draws me in. And once the mom group began, mm-hmm. It was like, I think it was right at the beginning of my pregnancy. So it was like the universe all came together. Knowing that I have a place that I can like go to ask questions for people that have been there before, get feedback, get support. I've made so many friends through the process of it. Yeah. And just like sharing victories, sharing challenges, whether it is something like workout related, I'm exhausted and I made myself do this workout and I feel better, versus like going in and asking questions about like, what did you do to help with your supply or heal your nipples or like anything like that. It just amazes me every time the amount of support that's there, and everyone's positive. Yeah. I'm in some groups where if you talk about, like I'm in the exclusively pumping group, right? If you talk about nursing, you're like that. And it's ridiculous. If you talk about actually breastfeeding, you're banned. or, somebody brings up a thing that, somebody doesn't agree with. I don't see that ever.
Yeah.
Which is what, we need. Like, women need that, especially moms need that. There's so much judgment. There's so much conflicting information that at the end of the day, we all need to do what works best for us. But having that support and having positivity and having answers and knowing other people have done it as well, it makes a really big difference. And it's made the world of difference for me throughout my pregnancy, but also now, like, as I'm a mom and I see what other moms are doing and how they fit their workouts in, like, to their lives now with children. How do you do it? And you see these women that have toddlers and infants, and they're got the baby in the seat and they're working out. Like, it's motivational. It's inspirational too.
Yeah, I totally agree. I noticed recently that you started doing squats in the Conscious Core program. Yeah. You got to that point. I remember how exciting that was. I want to just plant the seed for you that there are dumbbells coming soon. And I just did, I think I'm on day 14. And like, I'm super sore. And there were farmer carries and waiter walks. And hopefully that gives you something to look forward to, because I know that the first few weeks feel really tedious, and you're like, I just want to get back to, squats and push-ups. There's push-ups coming your way soon, so stick with it.
I'm in for it at all. I just did day 4 right before this, and I'm amazed at how sore. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
I knew getting back to working out after not doing it would be like challenging, and things that were easy before would be, but I didn't remember that like I would actually feel sore again from things that are, like you said, so tedious and so seemingly simple.
Yep.
But it feels good to feel sore again. It feels good to be doing something and knowing that it's, productive and it's healing and it's strengthening.
Yeah.
Instead of just jumping right back, even though I want to. And I've been, following everybody that's doing the normal, the daily workouts and lifting and doing all these things that I want to be doing, knowing that I'll get there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's exciting. That's, at least I know that's coming.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And knowing how sore I am after just like pretty basic movements, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm not ready for the other stuff.
Right.
Cool. As much as I want to be doing it, I'm not. So I'm glad I've got these to ease me into it. All right. Well, I think that about wraps it up, unless there's anything else that you want to add.
I don't think so. I will actually mention that we have, I'm going to be recording an episode for our podcast on postpartum, but we did a pregnancy episode, like all the things they don't tell you.
Yes.
They did that. And I don't know if you can link to anything, but I actually wrote a blog post about, preparing holistically for pregnancy.
Perfect.
Like physically, like nutrition, exercise, cycle syncing, mentally. Like I did this really in-depth post. So I can send you a link to that, and I think that's a great resource.
Where can we find you? Where can we follow you? What's your Instagram? All of that. Share it. If you can go ahead and just share it now.
Yeah. So I'm on Instagram at Root and Branch Nutrition.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, because of everything that's been going on, I haven't been sharing as much, but normally I'm there like educating about different aspects of hormones and health and fertility. But that's where I'm most active.
Okay. At Root and Branch Nutrition.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time, for sharing. And it's so nice to finally get to meet you.
I know. After all of our texting woes of our nursing.
I know. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, Kim, I will see you on the Facebook group soon.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.